So the other day, I was thinking, dangerous prospect, I know. But playing blues should be fun and exciting. But when soloing or improvising, it's very easy to just fall in the trap of noodling a minor pentatonic scale. So how do we take the usual and familiar and ramp it up? Let's take aim at improving the blues. I was born.
Huh, it was so windy out there. Blew all my hair right off. Weird how that happens, right? Anyway, I feel like something's missing. I need a guitar. There we go. Much better. Now in this lesson, I'm going to show you 3 tips that I like to use to play blues and solos in general with a little bit more intention and a little less fumbling around for the right notes. So let's hippity-hop on down to lesson number 1. Now blues, quite often, is built around the 1, 4, and 5 chord. So if I'm in the key of A, it would be A major, D major, E major, and then back to the A major. That's 1, 4, 5, 1. But what blues is really based on is tension. And so one of the ways you can add tension to a chord is by what's called extensions. Extensions are just adding the notes that are natural in that scale on top of the chord. So the first type of extension you can add is a 7th. Now if we're in the key of A, all I need to do is look at what are the notes in that scale to find how to build my 7th chords. So the key of A is A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. This 7th note, this G sharp, is only a half step away from the A. So to put a 7th onto the A major chord, you would just add in this G sharp, which is the 7th note. And that would create what's called an A major 7th. So an A would sound like this, while an A major 7th would sound like this. Now it's a nice sounding chord, but it doesn't really work in blues. So a lot of times, what they do to add in a little bit of tension is make every chord a dominant 7th. They're all flatted 7ths. So an A dominant 7 would sound like this. That's a lot more bluesy in my opinion. I don't know about you. So I'm going to show you a quick demonstration on how this changes the chord soundings if they were all major, or if you applied the correct 7th. So the correct 7th for A would be a major 7th, the correct 7th for D would also be a major 7th, and the correct 7th for an E would be the dominant 7th or the flattened 7th. So I'm going to show you what those two would sound like and then what it sounds like playing all dominant 7ths. That way you can hear how those 7th notes that are flattened in the A and the D really add tension to the entire progression. So all major. Now with the correct 7ths. And then now, with all dominant 7ths. So already it's sounding a little bluesier and a little bit more tension. So now that we have the basic structure of the song and the chords laid out, it's time to look at what scales we can use to add a little bit of tension to our blues playing. Now the first scale we're going to look at is the minor pentatonic. It's one of the most commonly used in blues, and there's a reason for it. It's built like this. A, C, D, E, G, back to A. And what that is 1, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, flatted 7th, and then back to the root. Now one of the things you want to do while you're soloing is have a lot of chord tones in there. So if you're playing over an A, you want an A, you want a C sharp, you want an E, and then if it's the A 7th, the dominant 7th, you want that G, the natural G, not the G sharp. Well, this scale has an A, has an E, and it has that G. The only thing it doesn't have is a C sharp, which is here. It goes down to a C. That's where the tension is. The best way to get tension when playing the blues is playing the minor 3rd over a major chord. So if you're playing an A major, you want to emphasize that C note from the minor pentatonic, something like this. On that riff, the two notes I really tried to emphasize, and here, were the C's. Now another scale, or more correctly a mode, that really works with playing the blues is the Dorian mode. Now there's two ways to think about the Dorian mode. It's a minor scale with a raised sixth, but it's also the second mode of a major scale. So if I'm playing an A, it essentially would be all the same notes of the G major scale, just starting on A. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Now what's nice about the Dorian mode is it does have that flattened seventh, which gives a little bit of tension, but since it's in the chords we're already playing, it's not like it's venturing off too far. And it does have the minor third, so you get a little bit of that same tension you would get from the pentatonic minor, but because it has this raised sixth F sharp note in it, the ending doesn't sound quite as dark and minor as something like this would. Essentially, the Dorian mode is a minor scale with a mixolydian on top. Now the mixolydian mode is found quite often in things like blues, jam band rock, bluegrass, things like that, where you want kind of a pentatonic feel, kind of a bluesy feel, but you still want to retain as much of the major tonality as you can. The mixolydian mode is the fifth mode of a major scale. A is a fifth of D, so essentially you're playing all the notes that are in the D major scale, you're just starting with the root note of A. The other way to look at it is it's a major scale with a flattened seventh. Now what this does is it eliminates that tension from the minor. It takes out that minor pentatonic and the minor Dorian, that minor third that was in there. It's gone now, it's a major third. So that part of the tension's gone, but it does include that flattened seventh. Even though it's part of the chords we're playing, it's not natural to a major scale, so you get a slight bit of tension with the mixolydian without venturing off too far. Now it's built like this in the key of A. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Those are really the three scales I would try to start off with if I'm learning how to solo or improvise over the blues. The minor pentatonic, the Dorian, and the mixolydian. Now to move on from just playing a scale over one chord, you want to be able to jump between the chords that are in the measure. And so there's really two ways to end a phrase and go into the next one. The first one I'm going to look at is if you want to end a phrase definitively. Now the way to do that is to find the important chord tones in the scales you're playing and end a phrase on those tones. So I'll be sticking with the minor pentatonic in this example because it just works perfectly. Now for the A chord, the three notes you really want to hit are the 1, the 3, and the 7. The 5 doesn't really add a lot, it just kind of complements the 1, so you really kind of want to stay away from that. And the 4 isn't part of the chord tones, so if you're really trying to say that something's over, you kind of want to avoid that 4 as well. So the notes you really want to focus on are the A, the C, and the G. Now the way each note interacts with the chord kind of determines what you're going to do. Now if you're wanting to end it definitively, let everyone know it's at rest, you're going to want to end on the tonic. Maybe something like this. We know it's over, we know it's done, we know that phrase, that statement is complete. Now if you want to end it in a definitive way but add a little bit of tension, that's when you want to go on that minor third. You still know it's over, you still know it's resolved, but it's not quite as happy and bright. Now for me, one of my favorite ways to end a phrase is on that flattened seventh because it feels like it wants to push forward. It doesn't feel completely resolved. Now if you want your statement to be continuous, you need to look ahead at what the next chord is. So if I'm going from A to D, what I want to do is focus on something that's going to emphasize the D. Now one of the best ways to emphasize the chord you're going into is by playing a leading tone, either a whole step above or a whole step below the root of the chord you're going to. So in this case, I'm going from A to D. So what I want to find is what is a whole step above a D, that's an E, and a whole step below a D, that's a C. Well, the beauty of playing that A minor pentatonic is that the C and the E are both notes in that scale, so I don't even really have to leave that scale to lead myself into the next chord. So if I'm trying to play something that's going to push into it, I would want to end on a C, but not do it definitively like I was doing earlier. What I want to do is have that C kind of blend right into the next part of the scale, which is going to hit that D. Something kind of like this. So that kind of just blended right into the next pattern. Now if I want to jump up above and then land back on the D, I want to hit that E note. So it would be something a little bit closer to this. Now on that one I actually went from D and then just jumped up to the E right at the end of what in my head was playing the A to go back down to the D. So it gives that. So again, going from C to D kind of has this feel, and going from E back down to D has this feel. Now the other thing you can do is try to land on the 5 of whatever your chord you're going from. And what's nice about going from a 1 to a 4 chord is that the 5th of whatever the 4 chord is going to be is the tonic of whatever the 1 chord was. So essentially if I land on an A and just kind of hold it over and don't show any kind of resolve, then it blends right into that D. Now you wouldn't be able to do the same thing using the pentatonic scale going from the 4 to the 5 chord, because the 5 chord is an E, the 5th of an E is a B, and B isn't in a D minor or tonic. But because the B is a 6th degree of a D scale, it actually does appear in the Dorian and the Mixolydian, which is one of the reasons I like using those scales. Now another good way to show purpose in your soloing is strategic use of things like slides, bends, vibrato, all that sort of thing. One of the things you can do is, let's say you're ending your scale on the root note, this A. You might want to slide into it as opposed to just playing it, because it kind of has that like cool, I'm getting home. It's a little bit more loose, a little bit more free. In addition, when you're ending a phrase like that, you want to add a little bit of vibrato. You don't necessarily want to go crazy like, I mean, you could, you know, if it works for the song, but if you're playing a solo and you want to end on that A, you might want to slide in and then just throw a little bit of vibrato on top, just for a little bit of spice. Like. You also want to make good use of your bends. Starting a phrase on a bend is always going to sound nice and it really draws people in. So you may want to, especially if you've got kind of a busy rhythm section like something like that, you may want to start with just a really strong bend. Something like that, so you're not competing with what the band is doing, but you're really pulling people in to what you're hearing. And again, on a bend, you can add a little bit of vibrato. Something like that. Just kind of adds a little bit of touch on your own thing. Another nice place to add a bend is in the middle of a phrase. Right before you're coming up to the climactic climb, you might want to put a bend in just to show, hey, we're moving towards the end. So maybe something like this. Something like that just kind of draws the listener in, and it shows that you're not just bending all willy-nilly. There's a purpose for it. There's a purpose for your vibrato. There's a purpose for your slides. All those little things you can do, you don't just want to put them in just to show off you can do them, but you want to use them strategically in your playing to really draw on the emotion that you're trying to convey. So I hope you found these tips useful. Hope you can incorporate them into your playing, your writing, create something amazing and make some beautiful music out there. I hope to see it from everyone out there. Leave a comment down below and let me know what kind of tips and tricks you use to make sure you're playing with purpose and intention. And subscribe for more tips like these and follow along as we're all embarking on this journey of becoming better musicians, better songwriters, and just better in general at life. I will see you in the next one. B-Row. Out.
really windy and cold out here right now, and I'm wearing a windbreaker and flip-flops.